Okay, yeah, everyone, it looks like we're live. It looks like we did it. Terribly sorry about that, everyone. Um, yeah, we've been sort of trying out different video platforms because a lot of them have been just experiencing so much duress under all this sudden pandemic usage. But looks like we're back on YouTube for now, so I'm glad this is working. So yeah, hello again, everybody. And like I said, if you have questions, be sure to ask them. We'll get to them in the Q&A, and I'll try to stick around for a little longer since we've been sort of delayed. So yeah, I'm apologize for that. But we're back and running, so let's get started. Like I mentioned last time around, we're going to be doing a free preview of the No BS course on freelance writing, and that's the course that we recommend for just about anybody. And especially newer writers. So if you're looking to get into freelance writing for the first time, if you've been thinking about it, but you're not really sure about where to go to learn everything, then this course is going to be one of the best resources I think you will have encountered. And everything today has been pulled from that webinar or from that course. Everything in the webinar has been pulled from the course. So you're going to be getting sort of a condensed version of what we offer in the course. In addition to that, throughout the webinar today, I'm going to be going over some exclusive offers that we have at Writing Launch, exclusive content, videos, coaching options, things like that. Things that we offer that, for the price that we offer, a lot of other places can't compete. And with the idea that hopefully you'll be able to join up because we're doing a free month of membership. If you have seen now that the coupon code donate is only good for new students. So if you haven't used Writing Launch yet, if you haven't signed up, because we wanted to make sure that as many people as possible can take advantage of this offer. We did one 1 or 2 months ago, and that was a real big success. And we wanted to just make sure that in the midst of the pandemic, we could offer as much as possible to as many people as possible. And so that's why we're redoing this for hopefully a whole new batch of people who will be able to take advantage of the offer. So today, that's what we'll be going over. So let me share my screen with all of you guys, and we'll get started. So awesome. All right. So today, like I mentioned, everything is coming from the No BS course on freelance writing. And that's our flagship course. I'll be talking about it a little later on. So yeah, and let's, without any further ado, get started. All right, now before we begin, I do have a few things that I want to just kind of put up here as disclaimers almost. One thing is that you don't need any experience to start. Now, this is something that we get a lot of questions about. We get so many people asking, "Oh, yeah, I don't really have any experience. Can I still join up as a freelance writer? Can I still make it?" And the answer is yes. You don't need any experience at all. All you really need to know is how to write well, and that's basically it. So that's really what you need to get started, and of course, a computer. But aside from that, just passion and perseverance really is what you need to get started. And it's completely possible to build a very lucrative freelance career from scratch. I say that because I did it myself. And like I mentioned, all you need is a computer and really the willingness to learn, because it is a learning process. You're going to, stumble a lot. You're going to need to refine your approach a lot. But if you keep to it, you'll be able to really get ahead of many other people who are trying to do the same thing as you. And again, all you need is a little bit of determination there. And something I want to make clear here is that we're going to be covering freelance writing, not creative writing. We actually do have a course for creative writers who are interested in freelance writing, but sorry, changing the setting real quick. But yeah, we'll be covering freelance writing, not creative writing. The difference between those two is just generally. Freelance writing is more aimed at kind of selling it as a business, whereas creative writing is more about self-expression. And if you are a creative writer interested in coming over to freelance writing, we have a course for that as well. But I think you'll also get a lot out of this webinar. Hang tight 1 second as I change one setting real quick. All right, awesome. So, hopefully you guys can hear me pretty well. So let's get started with the proper webinar. So yeah, I want to break this down into 3 simple steps just to provide an easy way of doing that. The first is to brand yourself. And that is sort of it can be a foreign concept to a lot of writers, but it's essentially the idea of, creating a brand for yourself, like you would for a business. And we'll go into detail on this later. The other thing is you'll, of course, need to get some experience, and we're going to go into detail on how to do that. We'll hang tight for that. But also, when you think of experience, I think that can be a really overwhelming thing, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We're going to discuss how to get experience in a way that is quite approachable, and you'll probably find that it's a lot easier than you think. And of course, you have to find work, which of course we're going to go over some strategies for getting jobs and things like that. And if you have questions about these, hold on to them as we go through the webinar. And then if you still have them as we're done, make sure to ask them in the Q&A segment of the webinar. So let's talk about step 1, which is branding yourself. The most important thing that I can tell new freelance writers is that you're selling your value, not your writing. Let me just let that sink in for a second. You're selling your value, not your writing. Now that may seem like an interesting statement, or I guess one that is maybe even confusing, because it seems like as a freelance writer, what you're doing is, you're selling your writing. Your writing is a product, right? And when it comes to freelance writing, that's not really the case. And we have a lot of students who are talking, who have come from creative writing, who are wondering about this. They, kind of think that you need to sell your writing as sort of a product. But really what happens is you're selling your value as, a sort of a one-person business. That's a good way to think about the position of a freelance writer. And branding is also how you communicate your value. It's how you tell a client or editor, okay, this is what I'm about, this is what I have to offer, and it's how people can tell whether they want to work with you or not, really. So it's a really important aspect of freelance writing. Now, as we talk about branding, think about these 3 questions. Question number 1 is, what value do I bring? And that's, sort of a very meta question in some regards. But this is one that's really important to think about if you want to, succeed as a freelance writer, because like I mentioned, as a freelance writer, you're essentially a one-person business. And you need to think about your value. What end goal can you help your clients or editors achieve? What's your ultimate sort of win for those people? What's your niche? And of course, this is pretty self-explanatory, but it's something that's really important to think about still. And we have a whole segments of our courses devoted to niche selection, and it can be a really confusing area for a lot of writers. But once you spend some time thinking about it in a really kind of systematic way, it gets a lot easier. So that's something that you can also learn in the courses if you sign up. You also need to think about what your style is. Every writer sounds unique. Every writer is going to have their own way of phrasing things and communicating value. So you need to think about what yours is, and that's also a very integral part. That the earlier you kind of tackle that, the more likely it is that you'll have more success straight away, because then you'll kind of know who you are as a writer, and you'll be able to move forward without any friction or anything like that. And you might even want to create a mission statement that answers those questions. This is an exercise that we often recommend for new students who are kind of confused about what they're doing as a writer. So For instance, you could say something like, I'm a health and wellness writer who helps busy people eat better and exercise more. And this kind of hits all those 3 bullet points of branding. It presents the value, which is, you help busy people eat better and exercise more. Your niche is health and wellness, and your style is sort of encapsulated in that sentence, right? It's sort of, a friendly, helpful sort of vibe. So even a little exercise like that can be really, really helpful when you're still kind of formulating yourself as a freelance writer at the start. And talking about niche selection, make sure you have selected a niche. I know that, some writers who are just starting think that they can just write about anything, and that's true. But at the same time, you want to specialize, because if you generalize in a bunch of areas, it's going to be really hard to actually kind of buckle down and make a career. So niche selection is really one of the most integral parts of starting out as a writer, is kind of identifying maybe 1 to 2 niches and then sticking with those. And don't go overboard, like I just said. 1 to 2 niches at first is fine. And many expert freelance writers really write only in one niche, and they get paid very well for that because they're sort of the experts in there. Everyone, let me know if you can hear me okay. But yes, let's keep going on this. So you need to think about what specific tangible value you can give to your clients and editors. And this is something that, of course, will change over time. But it's something that you want to think about at the start is, what value are you giving to people? And this is value in terms of end results. You want to think about the immediate, or not even the immediate, but the short-term and the long-term goals of how you can help people. So let's say you're writing an advertisement for somebody. What specific tangible value are you going to get for those people? Or are you going to give to those people, rather? That's really important to think about. Give me 1 second, everyone. All right. And yeah, next, like I mentioned earlier, you want to think like a business person, and you want to really treat yourself as a one-person business, like I've said throughout this, because it's really important in terms of being able to conceptualize freelance writing the right way. And of course, your brand is going to develop and evolve over time, and that's completely natural. You may find that you are a different kind of writer, a year from now than you are right now. But yeah, and this is sort of the skeleton of what it's like to brand yourself. Of course, we go more in depth into this in the courses, but yeah, this is sort of just the crash course version of this. I'm gonna exit out of here real quick. It seems like I'm a little quiet, so I want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. So let me just change a setting real quick. Okay, let me turn it up a little bit. Hopefully you guys can hear me better now. Let me know if that sounds better. Awesome. Okay, so let's go back into branding yourself. Now, I reset the slide. Gotcha. Okay, so we're on to step 2 now, which is get some experience. So once you've branded yourself, once you've thought about that, and once you're comfortable with what you're offering as a freelance writer, you want to move forward and, of course, get experience. And this is usually the crux of the problem for many new freelance writers, is they don't really know how to get experience without working for free. And of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with working for free, but we often don't recommend it because we often, we want you to get paid for your writing. And that's sort of our whole MO at Writing Launches. We want to help you build a career out of freelance writing. So in terms of working for free, it's not something that we avoid recommending necessarily, but there are just better ways to go about it. Now, whether you're just testing the waters of freelance writing, or whether you want to build a long-term career, you need experience. Either way, it's an integral part um, of what it is to be a freelance writer. And like I mentioned, it's often the hardest part for many freelance writers. But we're going to distill the experience down for you of getting experience, so you can get a better idea of how to go about that. Now, like I alluded to, if possible, don't take on any unpaid work. And this is, again, just a time kind of, time versus money kind of issue. You want to make sure that you're getting compensated for the skill that you have, for the value that you provide. So that's really going to be important when you're in the process of looking for experience. And another thing is that, taking on too much unpaid work can make clients think that you are just happy to work for free, that you're okay with it. And that can often create an expectation of, kind of perpetual free work. And if you are looking to build a career out of it, then that's something you definitely want to avoid. Now, this is a big one that I have to mention. You need to resist the urge to join content mills. And this is just something I could talk about for hours. And in fact, we have an exclusive podcast episode on Writing Launch of Jacob and I talking about content mills, and it's a really good listen if you want to kind of get more content about that. But content mills, if you're not familiar with them, are those sites where you join up as a writer and then you get sent work, and it's often you get paid really low rates, like sometimes under $5 an assignment. But you get so many assignments, and they just keep coming in and keep coming in, and you can make some okay pocket change doing that. But in the grand scheme of things, those are just dead ends for writers. I've never met a writer who is happy working for a content mill, or who has moved on from one and regretted it. Like, no one regrets leaving those. And these are sites like Textbroker, Constant Content. There are a million others out there like them, and it seems like new ones pop up sort of every day. So you need to just resist the urge to join those. And it's enticing. The allure of constant work is really something, but you definitely want to steer clear of these places. And you also don't want to join freelancing platforms. Now, this is a more slippery slope because, there are some people that use freelancing platforms and they do really well. I started out on one and I really regret it. And from all the writers I've talked to, very few of them are, making a good living off of writing for these platforms. Sites like Upwork and Fiverr, where you kind of have a little more, money. You make a little more money. You have a little more control over things. But in the grand scheme of things, you really don't. So we recommend avoiding these places, and that's just because there are better options. There are so many better places where you can get paid much better for your work and work with clients that you actually want to work with. And both content mills and freelancing platforms ultimately pay you next to nothing, and they're just not worth your time. And that's why we ultimately recommend kind of steering away from them. Now, in terms of getting high-paying writing jobs, there are two main roads that you can take to get there, and some writers take both. But we usually find that one is kind of more popular than the other, especially among creative writing crowds. So we'll be kind of delving into that first. But the two ways are writing for publications and writing for clients. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, writing for publications is we're using publication to mean really any sort of publication, from blog to a newspaper to a newsletter, any sort of a journal, any sort of thing like that. And writing for clients is usually writing for businesses or solo entrepreneurs who need stuff done. And that's usually going to be more of a businessy type setup, but it can teach you a lot, and we'll go into that later. Now, we find that most writers, like I said, especially ones coming over from creative writing, want to write for publications, but I do want to stress that that's not the only way. And writing for clients is a really good path that taught me a lot, and I actually greatly prefer it to writing for publications. So even if you're dead set on writing, getting published in different magazines and blogs and whatnot, I would encourage you to really kind of try to open yourself up to the idea of writing for clients, even if you just kind of toss it into your arsenal of freelance writing skills. But let's talk about writing for publications first. Now, the secret to doing this really successfully is guest posting, aka guest blogging. Now, guest posting is essentially writing articles for websites that accept content from freelancers. And this is a strategy that anyone can take advantage of. You don't even need to be a writer to take advantage of this. It's a really easy, really straightforward method of getting some experience that pays well. And many sites pay really well for articles. And like I mentioned, you don't need any experience to get started. Many blogs just accept content from anyone whose content is good. They don't really care about credentials. And as we get more along, in the internet age, and a lot of websites are kind of opening up to the idea of just having more types of content, the more that kind of setup is able to happen, to where you don't need to have a bachelor's degree in English or something like that to write a good article and get paid well for it. You can just have a passion for writing and be able to write well and be able to deliver good content, and that's all you need. And these sites are going to pay much, much better than content mills and freelancing platforms. When it comes to the kind of money you'll make from content mills and freelancing platforms, it's next to nothing. Sometimes it's just as good as doing it for free. You essentially get paid a couple of bucks. But on average, when you write for a website or a publication like this, you're generally going to make at least $50 per assignment, and that's on the very low end. We have a lot of publications that are paying upwards of several $100s for a single assignment. And of course, that's sort of a more advanced job, but that doesn't mean you can't get it. It just goes to show how much better these publications pay than mills or platforms. And when you're guest blogging, when you're going around, doing this, you want to look for a writer's guidelines page. And this is the page that has all the information about how you need to submit your content to the site. And it will tell you literally everything you need to do, at least hopefully. So read it carefully, dot your I's, cross your T's. You want to make sure that you follow all the rules here. And this can often mean the difference between success and failure. So we have a lot of situations we've seen where someone has submitted a really good article, but they didn't follow all of the guidelines, and so the article gets rejected. And that's just unfortunately how it is. Editors at these publications are incredibly busy, and they just need the quickest route to good content as possible. And so if you follow the guidelines, you're making it easier for them and really respecting their time. And we have a lot of other videos on our YouTube channel that go over this, and of course we talk about this in our courses. But this is a really important concept when it comes to guest posting. Now, our exclusive, the first exclusive that I want to draw your attention to, because I said I'm going to be kind of talking about some exclusive features that we have at Writers Launch. The first one is the Paid Publishers Directory. Now, if you are familiar with the Paid Publishing Guidebook that we send out, think about that, but way more massive and way easier to access. So instead of it just being a PDF file, this is an interactive marketplace where you can search by niche. You can search different publishers, and you can get all the information about the writer's guidelines right in front of you. It's just all given to you in an easy format. And if you join Writing Launch today, which you can do by clicking the link, hopefully above this video it should be, that you can immediately access this, and you'll just need to make a separate account for it. But once you're in, you can get access to a ridiculous number of publications. And I always say that this is the resource that I wish I'd had when I started freelance writing, and it really is. It's a fantastic resource, and if you're looking at getting published in publications, then this is sort of your one-stop shop to do that. So definitely look out for that if you decide to join. And our second exclusive is our course, the Bulletproof Pitching System. And I wanted to bring this up because it ties into the concept of guest posting in general. Because when you're guest posting, you need to send out pitches. You need to make sure that you have a good pitch. You need to make sure that you have refined your process for sending out pitches. And our 4-week course, the Bulletproof Pitching System, goes into depth on that. If you've seen any of our webinars in the past that go over pitching, or any of our videos, think that, but 100 times more intensive. It's a really, really intensive course that will, challenge you. It will make you take action. So throughout the course, you're actually writing and sending out pitches. and we'll do our best to hold you accountable for that because we want you to succeed. And so this is a really fun course that you can take if you're interested in improving your pitching better. So let's talk about now setting up a portfolio. And this is something that I also get a lot of questions about is, oh, I don't have a portfolio, what do I do? Well, we always say start without one because it really doesn't matter as long as you can put out good content. And now once you've gotten a few published and bylined articles, you can set up a portfolio, and there are so many great resources to use. Like you can use Contently, Journo Portfolio, or LinkedIn. You can make your own website. There are so many options. Just anywhere that a client or editor can easily view it is good. Yeah, if you have a website, you can host it there. And as long as people can just get to it easily and navigate it well, that's all you really need. All right, now we're going to talk about how to get started working with private clients. So everything I just mentioned is, in terms of writing for publications. When we're talking about working with businesses and, and people, it's a little different of a setup. So this is sort of its own thing. And like I mentioned earlier, even if this is not your cup of tea, I would highly recommend considering it because it taught me so much and it made me a better writer. It made me a better business person. And it really helped me advance my career in ways that I don't think I would have been able to had I just kept, writing for publications. So, yeah, give this some thought. Yeah, it's a bit more advanced, but it will teach you a lot. A good way to get started with this is to use Reddit, using the subreddit For Hire. Now, of course, you have to be careful because there are some scammers that will pop up from time to time, but that's true of any job board. You just have to be able to know what to look for. And actually, in our courses, we go over warning signs for job postings. So we point out, what to look for when you're kind of evaluating a post and you can't tell if, okay, is this shady or not? We give you all of the information that you need to. And you always want to use a contract. And in our courses, we have more information on this too, as well as suggested contract styles and things like that. But you want to make sure that you're protected. And you might want to consider requesting 100% payment up front. This is something that I always do unless it's an incredibly expensive project. Like usually my limit is about $500 USD. If it's below that, I just request all of it up front. Above that, you can get into some different payment options, but under that, you should have no problem requesting 100% upfront because a client that is unable to pay you, $500 or less upfront is probably not an incredibly serious client, and that may even be a warning sign in some instances. And yeah, Reddit is overall an excellent way to find high-paying clients. It's how I found some of my highest-paying clients, and of course, you just need to use discretion. You need to use to take advantage of the warning signs that we tell you to find in the courses if you sign up. That is, just kind of use common sense. If a post seems kind of shady, read it through. Make sure it's giving you all the details, and if it's not, then you may want to look somewhere else. Now, step 3 is finding work. So how do you actually go about regularly finding work and building a system for yourself? It really begins after you have a short portfolio set up. You want to have that done so you can begin your search for regular work and sort of get your process started in earnest. And of course, by this point, you'll probably have a pretty good idea of whether long-term freelance writing is for you or not. And if it's not, that's perfectly fine. But if it is, you can continue and really grow. Now, what we always recommend is starting by seeing if the blogs or the sites you wrote for earlier need more content. So let's say you've written for a publication and it went really well. What you can do is just email them back and say, hey, I have another idea. Or, do you guys need more content? We discuss strategies for this in our courses as well if you sign up using the link and the coupon code DONATE if you're a new student, of course. But that's the first step that we recommend because you already have a relationship with that editor, that person. It's a really good way of getting jobs right off the bat, in quick succession, and it works a lot of the time. And it's completely possible to build these sort of long-term relationships with these blogs, and you can even become a contributing writer or even a staff member. And that happened at one blog I was at. where I was writing for them, and eventually I became a content editor for them, and now I just write kind of regularly for them. On and off here and there, and it's just kind of it's a good relationship to have when you have these people that know they can count on you, and you have people that you can count on, and that's really what it's about, and that's how you can network really well and succeed. Now, some tips for getting published specifically. Refine your pitch, and as I alluded to earlier, this is really something you want to focus on quite a bit. Because pitching is usually one of the weakest points that I see in terms of newer writers or even more experienced writers who have maybe just not been at it for a while, because pitching has changed so much in the last few years. I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years, it's really changed a lot, and the methods that used to work don't work anymore. For instance, what used to work is really, descriptive pitches, really long pitches that put a lot of detail into them. And now what works is really short, almost too short pitches that give just a bare amount of detail and are able to describe without being long. And that's really hard, line to toe. But in our Bulletproof pitching system, as well as some of our other courses and exclusive videos, we go over how to refine your pitch. And we even have some pitching workshops available where you can see me critique other people's pitches. Now, if you have our road-tested pitch template, or if you've seen that before, or if you get that as a member, you will want to use that as a guide, but you'll want to personalize it. And that goes for any template, really. If you use a template for your pitch, you want to personalize it. And that's because, editors can usually tell when you're just using a canned pitch. And it's really, really off-putting when they realize that. But the more you personalize it and the more you add your own style to it, the better chance you'll have at getting an acceptance. And like I mentioned, you want to keep it short. I usually recommend, just a couple short paragraphs of like 2 to 3 sentences max. And that is often really weird for writers to hear because they're used to thinking about these really long, page-length pitches with excerpts from the article. And what you really need to do is just keep it as short as possible. And you also want to follow up. Now, of course, this can also mean the difference between acceptance and rejection. If you don't hear back in about 2 to 3 weeks, you want to follow up with a short one-line reminder, just saying like, hey, I submitted this article a few weeks ago. Have you made a decision on that yet? Or something like that. And of course, in our courses, we go over strategies for this, but it's just a good idea to get into the habit of following up. And if you follow up, usually what happens is either you'll get a hard decision from an editor, and sometimes what's happened is your pitch has just, fallen through the cracks. They've had an influx of pitches and they kind of just forgot about yours, but they're interested in it. And so once you follow up, you're kind of reigniting that conversation in the editor's head, and more often than not, they'll want to work with you. Now, here are some tips that are exclusive for getting clients. So this is sort of a little bit of a paradigm shift from pitching to publications, but this is really important stuff to go over as well. Now, when you reach out to a prospective client, you want to list your benefits, and that's because clients really want an easy breakdown of what you have to offer to them. And you have to keep in mind that when you're talking to a client, they're probably talking to at least a few other writers who are offering the same thing you are, and so you need to stand out. And just simply listing your benefits is one easy way of doing that. We go over in the courses how to make a benefit list and how to kind of get that started, and it's a great simple tactic to get more clients. And it's just as simple as a bullet point list. You want to think about how you add value to your audience, to your clients, and then you just want to list that out in a bullet point list. And actually, no matter what kind of writer you are, this can be a useful exercise to kind of get more comfortable with the idea of value and what value you offer. So just putting that in a simple bullet point list can work really well. And for client work, you want to use a per project rate, that's preferable, or a per word rate. That will do just fine as well. For publications, those will always, or almost always, be kind of pre-decided for you. So each publication has a budget, and they'll say we'll pay X amount of dollars per article. For client work, of course, you create your own rates. And so this is where you want to use a per project rate because it's easier for the client to digest, and it also allows you to make the most money. So that's really important. And when you're thinking about hourly rates, we get this question a lot too. They're not ideal for most freelancers because for a freelance writer to make an hourly rate, it would have to be quite large, and a lot of people are turned off by that hourly rate. There's just something about the pricing psychology of a per project rate that is a lot more more of an easy pill to swallow for clients. But yeah, and hourly rates also tend to devalue you because they essentially mean that you're selling your time as a commodity. If you do sign up for the course, in the No BS course, there's a great interview with a guy named Ryan Wagner on this, and he talks about pricing, and it's just an eye-opening conversation. So if you join, be sure to check that out. But yeah, the moral of the story here is that hourly rates are really not the best. And you still want to follow up. The rules are just a little different. And usually with clients, if you don't hear back in about 2 to 3 days, you'll want to follow up with a short one-line reminder. And this is because usually clients are not going to be inundated with the same amount of responses and pitches as a publication, especially a bigger publication. So a shorter follow-up window is really advised when it comes to clients specifically. Now, let's talk about a couple other ways to find work other than what we've already discussed. Job boards and newsletters definitely come in handy. Job boards meaning anywhere from Indeed to the ProBlogger job board, any kind of job board like that, and of course newsletters that send you jobs to your email. And of course, freedomwithwriting.com is one such job board that we have a lot of success with. We have a lot of people have success with that. And if you're not using that regularly, I don't know what you're doing because it's a fantastic resource. And you can also go to the ProBlogger job board, which of course is one I just mentioned. It's a really good job board. It does have some lower quality posts now and then, but for the most part, it'll just have pretty specific posts, so you'll need to be in certain niches, but it's worth checking out nonetheless. And that brings me to our third exclusive that I wanted to talk about, and that is that we offer case studies of how other writers have made, just ridiculous amounts of money, ridiculous successes, because how you find work is going to be unique to what your niche is, and there might be some overlap with other writers, but depending on your approach, you might be the only person in the world who's making money in the way that you do. But I think we all have a lot to learn from the ways that we make money, as freelance writers. And so what we've done is collected a bunch of case studies that are available to our members. And so if you sign up using the link above, you'll be able to access those immediately, and they're in the members updates section at the bottom of the members page, and you can just read about how other people have networked and how they've gotten gigs, and it's a really useful resource if you want to expand your horizons and sort of think about making money in different ways. So with that in mind, I want to open it up to questions from all of you now. So if you have questions, let me know in the chat or in the comments below. Hopefully this webinar has been pretty helpful, but of course we always want to make sure that we're addressing as many questions as possible. So with that in mind, let me exit out of this real quick and get back into here. Okay, awesome. So I hope that webinar was helpful for you guys, and I'd love to answer some of your questions now. And yeah, you can ask questions about just anything from the courses to specific resources we offer, to specific things about freelance writing, and really anything in between. Anything's fair game. So. Awesome. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay. I'm glad that it worked this time as well. Again, I want to apologize to everyone again for the rocky start. But yeah. All right, awesome. So let me look at the chat real quick. Can these tips work for bloggers? That's a good question. What we always get, for some reason, it seems like our audience is really passionate about starting blogs, and I think that's because you have a lot to share, and I get that impulse. But when it comes down to it, starting a blog is a really difficult process. And this is something we've talked about in a lot of our other webinars, but we end up bringing it up every time because it's sort of a frequently asked question. But it's really hard to start a blog. I tried to start a blog several years back, and it didn't work. I didn't have nearly the amount of time or money required to do it. And so generally, in terms of our main objective, it's to help freelance writers make money by writing. And blogging is not really a surefire way of making money, and it's also a different thing entirely from freelance writing. So when we talk about freelance writing, when we talk about blogging, those things are separate. And you can do freelance blogging, but it's a different thing from freelance writing. And so it's really important to understand the difference between those two. Now, can these tips work for bloggers? I'm sure some of them can, but we've catered these tips to freelance writers specifically because we know that they work, and we know that they have just proven to be really effective time and time again. And so you can definitely take some of these lessons and apply them to blogging, but on the whole, blogging is just a whole different beast. Here's a good question. How do you blend your style with what your client expects you to write? So how do you blend what you want with what your client wants? This has surprisingly not been a problem for me specifically. And I think that's because and I think it's true for a lot of writers, because, think about it, if you write in a specific niche, then your writing style is pretty much, in line with what that niche expects in most cases. And so when you're writing for a client and they're like, okay, we want you to hit these certain beats, we want you to have this certain tone, you probably already have it if you're, in the spot where you have, gotten that job, right? And of course, not always. It's unique to every job, every person, obviously. But for the most part, I think that if you already are in a niche and you're experienced with the different types of writing in that niche, then you should be fine. And that's really about just taking in a lot of content. You need to read a lot. You always want to be sure to continue researching. Even as you get more and more experienced, you want to always look to improve and just keep reading the newest stuff in your niche. New upcoming publications in your niche. You just want to stay as informed as possible, and then you'll be able to hopefully take a lot of that in. Here's a good question. Do you have any tips for getting a recommendation or word of mouth from a current client? I have one great client so far, and I'd like to approach him on referring me to others. That's a great question, because referrals are some of the best ways to get more clients, because you have that sort of soft foot in the door with the person. The way that I usually do this is just by, politely asking the person. It can just be a separate email, or something that works really well is after you finish the job, in sort of your concluding email, you can just ask for a reference, and that'll sort of end the project on a good note. But I just will politely email somebody and ask, like, hey, I'm looking for new clients to take on right now, or I have some space in my schedule. Do you know anyone who could use the work? And we talk about referrals in the courses throughout, so if you want to get more information on that, definitely do that. But yeah, in general, it doesn't need to be a complex thing. It can just be sort of an informal, laid back, just like, hey, do you know anyone who could use my help? And have that space open in your schedule, but don't count on it. And that can be sort of a tricky thing to do, but you'll be able to feel it out the more that you do it. Someone asks, can you please elaborate on the freelance course for creative writers? I'm assuming you mean the No BS course. If you're talking about that one, which is sort of our flagship course, that's a 6-week course that goes into all kinds of details about freelance writing. And it's geared toward new writers, and it's geared toward people who want to start out, and maybe they have been freelance writers before, but they're coming back into it, or maybe you've never been a freelance writer before. This is the course you want to take. 6 weeks long. It's pretty intensive. We want everyone to absorb a lot of information, but it's still a lot to unpack, so we've spaced it out accordingly. And it's really it's a course that most of our members have just absolutely loved. We get so many good comments on it, and we're so glad that I can help so many people. It goes over topics like, how to select your niche, how to define yourself as a writer, how to look for jobs, everything that you can think about. It's sort of the crash course guide on becoming a freelance writer. So if that's something that interests you, definitely check it out when you sign up. And also, one other course I wanted to highlight real quick is our newer course, Freelance Writing for Creative Writers. We know that a lot of you are coming over from the creative writing side of things, and maybe you want to, do some freelance writing on the side, which is, I think, most of you, or you want to make a career in it and just sort of transition fully from creative writing to freelance writing. In either case, it's a whole new skill set, and it was really tough, for me, for instance, to transition from a creative writer to a freelance writer because the skill sets involved can be so different at times. So what we've done with this course is just jam-packed a lot of information on, on how to switch over from creative writing to freelance writing, how to change your mindset, how to pick up new skills, and all that. So it's a really informative course if that fits you. So definitely check that out if you're interested in that. We have another question saying, I have a particular publication in mind, but should I start small first? I think it's a good idea to start smaller. My usual recommendation is go for the medium-sized blogs. And what I mean by that is, publications that are big enough that they have an audience and, they have sort of a budget to pay writers. That's something that's obviously going to be really important because if you can't get paid, it's sort of a loss. But the issue with a lot of really small publications is that they don't have an audience, and sometimes they won't even have a budget to pay writers. But on the other hand, some big publications won't pay writers because either they only pay their staff or they just argue that they can pay you in exposure. And the saying, artists die of exposure. So that's definitely something to be on the lookout for. And it can be hard to kind of find these medium-sized publications, but the more that you look, the more of them you'll find, and they're really quite common. If you use the paid publishers directory on Writing Launch, on our members area, you'll find a lot of sites that fall into that category. So thank you for that question. I think that's something a lot of people have been wondering about. I'm going to go through a couple more questions, but also I just want to mention, again, if you are interested in taking advantage of the free month as a Writing Launch student, be sure to click the link above and you'll be taken to the enrollment page where you can use the coupon code DONATE. And of course, if you've already taken advantage of this offer, we'd ask you not to take advantage of it again so that we can get hopefully as many people as possible. It is for new students only. But we were really happy to do this last time, and we saw just how many people we were able to help with that, and we just we want to make sure that we're helping as many people as possible in any way that we can. And hopefully, if you're able to, you'll be able to stay past the free month. We'd love to have you in our community, and it's a great place to be if you're a freelance writer. Another question I wanted to hit real quick is something that I get asked a lot, which is about simultaneous submissions, and that is, can you pitch one piece to multiple publications? And we actually have a video on our YouTube channel about this, so check that out after this if you want to. But generally speaking, we recommend not doing simultaneous submissions, and instead really tailoring your content, tailoring your pitches for each publication. That's going to be some of the most successful, or it'll help you optimize your chances for success. Let me put it that way. Because the way that the space is right now is publications are pickier than ever about what content they accept, and especially for ones that pay really well. You need to be the best, for them, that is. And so when you tailor your pitches for a specific publication, and when you write content and pitches with one publication in mind, that dramatically increases the chance that your pitch is not only going to be better but also get accepted. Because if you just send a generic pitch that could have been sent to any publication, editors are going to pick up on that. They're going to be able to tell, and more often than not, it will result in rejection, which of course you don't want. So taking that sort of more deliberate, custom approach is what you're going to want to do in those cases. Well, all right, it looks like we're a little actually over our time. It's 4:30. I know we started a little bit late. If you guys have questions, what we'll do is we'll open up, our email to any questions. So all you have to do is email support@writinglaunch.com, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. I just kind of want to make a last call in the webinar today for you to join for the free month. If you haven't taken advantage of that offer already, we would love to have you. We'd love for you to go through the courses and, email us if you need any help and just kind of see what we have to offer. If you do join up, there's a getting started video on the members page. You'll get just everything you need to get started and optimize your chances for success. So hopefully I'll be seeing a lot of you in the Writing Launch community. If you have questions, like I said, email them to us at support@writinglaunch.com, and we will make sure to take care of you and answer as quickly as we can. Hopefully, usually within 1 to 2 days or so. So I hope this has been a good exclusive look at the webinar at the courses for you. Again, my apologies for the rocky start, but I'm glad we pulled through, and I'm very glad that you were able to make the time to join me today, whether you're watching live or you are watching the replay. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see a lot of you in the Writing Launch community. I'll talk to you soon.